Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Too Long Didn't Read Dota News. For this week, I'll be focusing entirely on getting you guys prepped for the Frankfurt Majors. Now, today's episode is entirely focused on this. The Frankfurt Majors main stage will be from Monday, November 16th to the Grand Finals on Saturday, November 21st. I think everyone's pretty happy that Grand Finals will indeed be a Saturday. This Majors is run by ESL with Valve oversight, so I'm interested to see if the Majors will be styled and run like a TI, which we all love, or an ESL event, which there were some criticisms of the last time. Now, to refresh your memory from earlier episodes, recall that there are 8 invited teams and 8 qualified teams. So EG, Secret, VP, Vega, CDEC, Vici, LGD, and eHome were direct invites. Unknown and Cloud9 qualified from Americas, Alliance and Monkey Business from Europe, IG and Newbie from China, and Fnatic and Mineski from Southeast Asia. Now, remember that Monkey Business is actually now OG, and additionally, and unfortunately, Super was unable to get a visa, so that meant IG was out of the majors. This means that Newbie Young will actually be replacing them. Now, before the main event, there's going to be a group stages like I mentioned in the last episode. So there's 4 groups in a double elimination style bracket where the top 2 from each advance on to the winners bracket and the bottom 2 from each group go on to the losers bracket in the main stage. So here the groups actually have been released, and so is the schedule for when they're going to be playing. So both days the schedule is actually exactly the same. So I put up the times there in EST if you're like me and on the East Coast in the US, or CET like where the tournament's being hosted. So starting at 11 a.m. in Europe, we're going to have games. Friday will be all Group A and B games, where Saturday will be Group C and D games. Now the way this will work is the first series of games is your initial games, and then the second series will be the winners matches that determine that A first place in my little schematic I have. Then the next game are elimination matches, so that determines letter D, which is like the 4th place finisher in each group. And then the 4th match of the day is the decider match between whether you're going to upper bracket or lower bracket as far as 2nd and 3rd place go. So for Group A, I'm going to kind of take you through every single group, the teams in them, and some stats that the wonderful people at Standard Deviants did for me. When I get into this, you guys will see Standard Deviants are great. Special thanks to Vengeance, Lurkaderp, and Cart Dota for helping me compile all of this. I wanted to give you guys, if you hadn't been able to watch all the games, a quick little update on what these teams are picking, what they're playing, and how successful they've been recently. So we're starting out with Group A. And the way this will work is what you see up on the screen are the teams that are actually playing each other first. So Evil Geniuses will be playing Fnatic, and VP will be playing Newbie from Group A in their first matchup. So for Evil Geniuses, they've played 17 games so far in 6.85. Now, they have been directly invited to pretty much everything, so these are really only LAN games in a highly competitive environment against the best teams. So their low win rate isn't exactly indicative of their skill level, and as such, the sample size for some of these picks are kind of low. So what I'm going to show you for every team, EG's most prioritized hero, the one they pick the most, is Darkseer. They have a 20% win rate with Darkseer. The overall win rate with Darkseer for only the teams at the majors, so all 16 teams at the majors in 6.85 have picked Darkseer 103 times and have a 55% win rate with him. So they're doing a little better than EG on average with that. EG also has picked a lot of Wyvern, and they also really like the Shadow Fiend. So they're going to be facing up against Fnatic, who likes to pick Dazzle, Broodmother, and Lina. So what you might expect to see from Fnatic is maybe even that second pick Broodmother to make sure that they get it when she's usually banned out in the second phase, so they can't get that surprise 4th pick Broodmother. But Fnatic does prioritize her, so you might expect to see her picked up in their drafts. Now, as for the other series, we've got Virtus Pro. They've got 34 games with an even 50% win rate. They also have been invited to most tournaments, and they really prefer to pick up the Darkseer, the Spirit Breaker, and the Ancient Apparition. So this is a lot of fighting, but also decent late game presence with the AA Darkseer. Now the next series, okay, so VP is facing up against Newbie. Here we go. So Newbie actually only has 20 games. Now they have a 65% win rate, so they're doing pretty well, but they do have a pretty low play rate with these, and unfortunately I was unable to get ban data for them. But Newbie has very different picks from most teams. So they prioritize the Lina top, and that's in over 50% of their games. They're picking Lena. And then Earthshaker and Rubik are their other main picked heroes, and as you can see, they're incredibly successful with Rubik. So that might be something you see them go to as a comfort hero. It's something they play incredibly well. Now, for Group B, which I personally think is maybe the most challenging group, just because OG is really one of the stronger teams coming into this. So they are one of the qualifier teams that you expect to do incredibly well, even though they weren't directly invited. And then there's also Vici, Unknown, and Vega Squadron. So for Vici Gaming, 28 games, so again, not a lot because they've invited to a lot of things, and they prioritize the Queen of Pain, the Dazzle, and the Undying. This is pretty standard as far as prioritizing Queen of Pain and Dazzle. You're going to see that a lot. Now, for Unknown, they also have Queen of Pain and Dazzle in their top two with a Tusk for the third pick. So this series will be interesting to see how these teams draft against each other because they really won't be able to both get their comfort heroes or their strong prioritized picks. So we might see these guys banned out and other heroes come through the draft. We'll have to see what these teams come up with to face off against each other. Now for the other match, we've got Vega, who is Dazzle, and Queen of Pain. Like I said, in Group B, this is a pretty common trend. And they also have the Ember Spirit. Now, they are incredibly successful with Ember Spirit. Now, Ember has an over 50% win rate as far as the Frankfurt teams are concerned. But as far as Vega goes, they actually have 15 wins with him, so that's 80%. 15 games with him, they've won 80% of those. And Vega has played a lot of games. If you recall, they were pretty much invited to the majors because of their win at ESL. But for every other tournament, they've had to play through qualifiers. So they've had a lot more games than a lot of the other invited teams. And they'll be facing up against OG, formerly known as Monkey Business. OG has a ridiculous amount of experience with 6.85. They've played the most games of any of the teams going to the majors, and they have an incredibly high win rate with almost 72% of those games have been won. So they really prefer Dazzle, Undying, and Shadow Fiend. Now, just looking at these picks, this says just really strong lanes and a lot of potential aggression just looking at the Undying and the Dazzle that are save people. So they have a remarkably high win rate on all of these heroes as compared to the overall win rate on these heroes by other Frankfurt Majors teams. So we expect to see OG playing incredibly strongly, I think, in this group. And moving on to Group C, this is Team Secret and Newbie Young. Remember, Newbie Young replaced IG. And then LGD up against Cloud9. So for Secret, they have unorthodox picks as compared to everybody else, but what else would you expect from Puppy? So they really like their Bane. Bane does really well for them. Nobody's going to forget about the Weehao Wind Ranger. They play very strongly with that. And then they also really like Ember, something that we're seeing is a pretty common trend as I go through these teams. You'll see a lot of Ember pop up. Now they'll be playing up against Newbie Young, who likes Gyro, Earthshaker, and Queen of Pain. So these are different from the heroes that Secret prioritizes. So what we might see end up happening is that each team kind of gets their own draft, and then it's going to come down to execution or whoever had the best strategy. But it won't be so much them trying to deny picks or work around each other if each team lets them get what they want. And then for the other series, it'll be LGD. So they have low number of games played, again, because they were directly invited to a lot of things. They really like Tusk, Darkseer, and Ember. Now, although they like Ember, they have a pretty low win rate with him. Now, to be fair, LGD has probably been playing mostly Ember at LANs, again, in that higher competitive environment rather than, online qualifiers. But maybe that's a hero that Cloud9 lets through because LGD doesn't seem to be that successful on it. And then as for Cloud9, they played 40 games with a 55% win rate, so they're maybe middle of the pack as far as this analysis would put them. So they really prefer Ember, Ancient Apparition, and the Tusk. Now for the Tusk, they actually don't do as well with it as other teams do, but their Ember and their AA is above other teams. So these are, potentially more comfort heroes, or I think these show more of a preference for a late game and having sort of a safety in the back of your pocket with the AA who can hold off against pushes in late game, as well as an Ember who just gets completely out of control. So we'll have to see how that series turns out. Now, the last group, Group D, eHome, Alliance, CDEC, and Mineski. So eHome has 29 games, again, directly invited to a lot of things. Their win rate is decent. It's actually a lot higher than the other invited teams. They prioritize, Tuskar, Queen of Pain, and Spirit Breaker. So pretty standard. They will be fighting up against Alliance, who, Tuskar and Queen of Pain, These are both, heroes that we're used to seeing, whereas Alliance has this niche pick with this Bat Rider, kind of coming out of nowhere. Nobody else prioritizes it. Bat Rider has only been played 28 times by the teams at Frankfurt Majors, and 15 of those were Alliance. So I think that's, their sort of niche hero that they really seem to like to pick up a lot. So we'll have to see if they pull out the Bat Rider and what they can do with him, or if that was just a gimmick for online games. We'll have to see on that one. And then CDEC, again, low number of games, Ember, Queen of Pain, and Lena. Now, an important thing here is we've seen Lena prioritized by a few other teams, but I think that no one quite plays the Lena like CDEC does. I believe it's Shiki, who absolutely just dominates everybody with this Lena. So I would say this is something for teams to be scared of. CDEC has a much higher win rate with Lena as compared to other teams, and she can, really dominate Queen of Pain mid, which we've seen that co-op is preferred by a lot of these teams. So Lena might be, the hero to look out for CDEC pulling out against a lot of these teams. And then Mineski, last one, they have 58 games, so a lot of games. They've had to play through a lot of Southeast Asia qualifiers. They really like that co-op, but it doesn't seem to work that well for them. So they've actually picked or banned it in about 50% of their games. They do a little better when they ban it than when they pick it. When they pick, their win rate's a lot lower than the overall win rate with her. However, with Wyvern, they're incredibly successful, and with Windrunner, they do decently well. And you can see a lot of these other teams, even when they have 50 to 60 games, they're not picking one hero this much, whereas Mineski really seems to rely on these three heroes, with them being in about a third of their games. So they have maybe a little more standard picks as far as their main heroes go. So hopefully this has prepared you a bit for the upcoming Majors qualifiers and the main stage. Thanks for watching this episode of TLDR. I'll see you guys after the Majors to give you a summary of the event, all the games, the feedback that everyone heard, and give congratulations to the winner. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.